Hi, I'm Ray McCaffrey. I'm the executive producer for Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach at Steelwool Studios.
So, Ray, talk about some of the challenges when you were taking this famous franchise and putting a modern spin on it.
Yeah. So we were a pretty small team, and when we first launched the teaser trailer for it, it was at a really big event, and our trailer ended up competing with some of the biggest AAA games. Actually, I think we were number 3 in the overall list against like Miles Morales and a couple other games. Anyway, that basically leveled up the expectation for this game, which means we had to level up the expectation for this game. And so, we took a lot of risks. We changed thematically the way that Freddy's felt. That was really important to us, having this very happy, lighthearted juxtaposition type of thing. And that was one of the big things, making it an actual 3D world that players can run around in. That was something that was new. Having a very vocal protagonist, present protagonist, that was a big change. So
There's a good guy now in the game, which is interesting.
yeah, and it isn't just the one, right? So we have Gregory, who's the protagonist, and then we have this happy animatronic, right? Like this heartwarming animatronic, and they develop this really cool bond and this really good relationship together. So rather than being terrified of Freddy, right, he is your companion through this whole game. Now, that was another one of those things that was risky, but very important to us as far as like building the game goes.
It's very different from the other core games in the core franchise in terms of Five Nights at Freddy's. Talk about some inspirations you drew through, because when I played through the game, I'm thinking Metroid, a little Metroidvania in there, like a lot of items you unlock, cool set pieces that you encounter.
Yeah, so a lot of folks from the studio grew up in our creative director specifically, grew up in the 80s when what you did was you went and hung out at the mall, right? And so when we were talking about different set pieces, different places where we can have this, it was, well, what would be the next evolution of Fazbear Entertainment? If they were successful, what would they do? And they would open a essentially indoor theme park. That would be it. So then it was, how do we paint it? And it was, hey, let's lean into the mall, right? Let's go with that aesthetic. Let's add the neon lights. Let's do the opposite of Freddy, right? And that's what it ended up being.
Your carpet was amazing in that game. Like, this carpet's great. Like, it was the 90s carpet, yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. There's a handful of carpets that were a lot of fun to design. I think it was a meeting where we were it was like looking at swatches, basically, but digital ones. That was a lot of fun.
So, and they can't see me off camera, but what are some of the challenges of making a horror game for kids?
What's really important to us as a studio is ensuring that our kids could play it. Right? And so you have to walk the line between making it dreadful without being too overtly constantly scary, right? So that was one of the nice things too about the aesthetic, was we could leave the very terrifying environment and go to this very environment, right? Like, one of the most important things with horror games, particularly for kids, is you got to give them a break. They need a minute to okay, I did the thing, it's time to catch my breath. And so that was one of the things that we focused on. And then the other thing, honestly, is not being overtly violent. That was one of those easy things to do, right? Because again, we want our kids to be able to play it. And so that was, walking that line is one of those things you kind of got to iterate on and find the sweet spot. So
what are some of the inspirations you pulled from when designing the game? Like, when I played through it, I totally got BioShock vibes.
Yeah, I think when we were looking at overall vibe, it was, Gregory essentially has no weapons. It is true survival horror. And one of the games that we played a lot was Alien Isolation. That was a really big inspiration for us, because you run into the xenomorph and that's it, right? So the hiding spot was part of it. Obviously, we added some mechanics where Gregory is able to defend himself, right, which is not entirely different from that game. That was a really big gameplay inspiration for us. And then, really, the biggest inspiration at the end of the day was Freddy's, right? So we took a lot of thematic elements from previous games and dropped them into this one. So there's security offices, but rather than have it being one office that you sort of go in night after night after night, we have all of these different security offices that have different mechanics and different games and different enemies, right? So that was another one of those things that we got to play around with, which was really exciting.
Your environment artist did such a phenomenal job. Every area felt so unique and different from the rest of the areas. From the mini golf course to the arcade to the Cesar Hall to the entertainment lounge. Everything felt just like it had its own personality.
Yeah, building the environment was one of the very first things that we did. Our studio walls are just covered in concept art for all the different things that we could do. Because it was, sort of attraction-based inside of a mall, it was really just, hey, go have a great time. So our lead environment artist is deeply, deeply passionate about making sure what he brings to the world is something that he can be proud of. And so he put in no small amount of efforts to make each place as unique as he could. I mean, we'd be having discussions about one environment and say like, well, we already did that in Gator Golf, or we already did that in Bonnie Bowl or Mazer Size, so let's not do that here. So we differentiated them not just in design because we could. Actually, that was by and large because of the characters themselves, right? Thematically taking the characters and the spirit of them inside of the attractions, right? But then it was having these wildly different themes based on the characters, and then wildly different themes based on the gameplay, right? So, I mean, Gator Golf, right? It has that dread, it has that more maze path. Mazer Size is quite a literal maze. So yeah, that was sort of how we went around with it. It was, what would we enjoy? Is kind of what it was. If this was real, what would we love to see, and what would we really enjoy?
Your team even did the Resident Evil thing where you go through a maze, find an item, then have to go back through the maze with everything off.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was like watching the play tests for those, and like watching people on the team react, or seeing QA play it for the first time. Oh, that brings you so much joy. When people literally like take off the headphones and just do this with their face, you just know that you're on the right track. So.
Talk about the original creator. What was his involvement with Security Breach? Was he kind of just there as a consulting role, thumbs up, thumbs down, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Scott Cawthon's great to work with, and he trusts us a lot with the franchise, which we really appreciate. So, that's about it.
So when you launched, you were a PlayStation exclusive. I think you're on PC now and now Nintendo Switch. What was it like having that exclusivity on the PlayStation for that year?
Again, like great partners, the game itself was wildly successful for us. And so, really by and large, thanks to them, we were able to take this team that, again, was deep in VR and had worked very closely in VR with them, and then try and do this very new, very ambitious thing. So, we're grateful for all the help they've been able to provide for us, and hey, we've got a Switch version on the way, so,
Whenever you're making a game that's parodying something in real life, it can be dicey. Any stories you can tell with us working through legal or getting stuff not approved, or something that had to be changed because of a certain entertainer, that Charles M. Cheese?
No, actually, for us, it's Freddy's is just so unique. So at the end of the day, we really don't have that problem. What's also really nice is if we want to solve a problem, we can create something new to solve the problem. Right, one of the new characters in this game was the daycare attendant, and we just got to have so much fun making that character. Really, two characters, right? That was one of those times where it was, hey, the world is kind of our oyster. Let's go at it, right? And so, a lot of folks at the studio come from either AAA games, or like the founders come from Pixar, right? And so we're very, very familiar with not stepping on any toes. Like there's so many landmines you can just avoid by using common sense.
I always thought this franchise is fascinating because the younger demographic was really drawn to this game at a young age, and most of them have probably never even been to a Chuck E. Cheese, but like they still got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's something uniquely terrifying about the animatronics, even if you've never stepped foot in a Chuck E. Cheese. I mean, it almost falls into the uncanny valley where it's like, I know that something is wrong, but I don't know what it is, and then something is very obviously wrong, right? And it's fun. It's fun that way. Like, you can have horror icons that everybody will recognize, and they're vicious a lot of the time. We get to induce that dread with balancing the act between this is a very human-like thing that is not human, also it does not like you, you need to run. So, it's a lot of fun to play with.
It's funny, there's a phobia named after fear of animatronics. I don't know what it's called, but I know there's one out there.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure what it is, but now I got to look it up.
So what can people who have the PlayStation version or other versions look forward to playing on the Switch version? Any kind of unique Easter eggs on the Switch version specifically?
For the Switch, what we really focused on, the most important thing to us, was making sure you could play it on the go. So when you've got it in the handheld, it looks great, it plays great, it does everything that we wanted it to do. So that was really the focus for us. Other than that, I mean, it's, playing it on the go is really the big unique thing for us.
So what's next for your studio? You can talk about in more your own IP, more Five Nights at Freddy's.
We're currently working on DLC actually for Security Breach. So we actually had an alpha milestone not too long ago. All that went really well. So we're around in the corner and we're gonna announce some stuff soon.
You can say new location, new character.
Oh, I can tell you that we were focusing on Dread, and we really nailed it. So at least I think we nailed it. So.
When does the game come out on Switch?
It's coming soon. Yeah, we don't have a date yet.